Welcome to this month's edition of Cladara Connect. So I'm Katie from the customer success team here at Cladara. I'm really happy to have you all here. So for those of you who are new to Cladara Connects, this is our monthly space for finance folks where we talk about the topics that are really affecting the way we work today. I think right now there's a lot of change. I think there's always change, right? And this year on Cladara Connects, we've already spoken quite a lot about the macroeconomic climate and how that's affecting investing, the shift towards profitability versus growth at all costs. And we've also spoken about AI, which I think everybody's still trying to figure out the role it will play. And today's discussion is going to be really interesting. So we're going to talk about how those shifts are influencing budgeting and planning for 2026. And to help us unpack all that, we've brought back one of our favourite guests, Sophie Conaghan. She's from CharlieHR, the finance leader at CharlieHR and the founder of Finance for Founders. And Sophie joined us last year for a really great session on how to approach budgeting. We can share the link to that session so you can watch that one back as well. And we're really thrilled to have her back as a returning guest. So hi, Sophie, how are you today?
Hi, Katie. Great to be here. Very well, thank you.
Good. Are you in the thick of budgeting at the moment?
Yeah, we're in our budgeting phase. Yes, definitely. So good time to be chatting.
Fantastic. And I'm also joined by my co-host, Paul McCarthy, my colleague here in the customer success team. I'm sure a few of you have had the pleasure of speaking to Paul already on a call. So how are you today, Paul?
Very good, Katie. Very good. Yeah, really looking forward to the session today. I think all of us on the team have had nice conversations with customers lately around budgeting. So I think this webinar has come at a good time. And yeah, on that as well, just before we jump into the conversation with Sophie, we want everyone to try to participate as much in this webinar as possible. Keep it really dynamic. We want to have it more as a conversation. So we do appreciate your questions and comments. So yeah, feel free to use the chat and the QA feature here, and we'll do our best to get them answered by either myself or Katie or Sophie as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, and while we're just on housekeeping, the session is being recorded and will be made available. So let's start with a quick poll, see where everybody is at the moment.
Yeah, let's get one going. Yeah, we'd love to know how everyone is thinking about budgeting. And I suppose the question here is, are you planning on doing anything different for your budget this year? So yeah, you can choose from the options below, yes, no, or maybe you're open to suggestions.
Oh, fantastic. Sounds like we've got quite a few people saying yes.
Nice.
And a lot of people saying they're open to suggestions, which is, I guess, why they're here today. And only one person so far not planning any changes. Again, we've got the chat there, so we really do want to hear your questions and comments as we go through.
Perfect. So yeah, Sophie, hand it over to you. We'd love to just know. So question one, in your experience, what are you seeing as different about this year when it comes to budgeting? And is there anything different that maybe folks should be taking into consideration this year?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So I think a couple of the points from Katie's intro are super relevant here. Talked about this changing economic environment and macro factors that are at play, and the impact of that on perhaps the need to shift to considering profitability above growth at all costs. It's definitely that there. There's also, this change in maybe the way numbers are being sort of talked about a bit more freely than they've been previously. An example of job descriptions will often have the salary stated on them now, which, a few years ago was not the norm. So there's this breaking down of taboo is a strong word, but like this breaking down about just being more free and talking about the numbers and sharing more across the organization internally and a bit more externally as well. And that sort of pulls into another point around the, if you like, democratization of data and more data being available, well, full stop, more data being available, but more data being shared across the business and people across functions having access to that data, which includes financial data and financial understanding. And there's a shift to CEOs wanting to lead a kind of culture of transparency and opening up a bit more about their business in terms of financials. So talking about strategy alongside what that means financially. And that openness to engage people in businesses. I mean, ultimately, as employees, we should all want the business to be successful because then we have a job. But also, lots of people working in startups, for example, are probably quite commercially savvy and maybe even one day want to start their own business. So it's a great place to learn as well. So this democratization and sharing more transparency, it's beneficial for the employees as well. But it also means they get more scrutiny and people want to understand like the why behind every line that's in a budget. So yeah, when you're putting your budgets together, thinking about how you're going to communicate it as well, depending on the sort of transparency culture of your organization.
Totally.
On there, Sophie, I just was curious, is that shift to profitability kind of driving that democratization of data, the fact that perhaps more team managers have to be a little bit more aware of what they're spending versus maybe 2-3 years ago, where there was maybe not much need for your heads of department to have such a hand in that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And even communicating and educating everybody on what profitability means or what it means for your business. And it's not just creating profit for the sake of creating profit and it's all going into this mysterious pot, explaining where it's going, what it's being reinvested, how as a whole team you see that profit being used. And yes, it is that as an education piece alongside this budgeting. It shouldn't any longer be, here's your budget, go spend it. We don't want to hear any more, and we don't want you to ask us any more questions. It should be more of a conversation.
Totally. And I suppose, yeah, building on that and maybe to start at kind of like a high level, how do you make sure that your budget or your forecast aligns with that company strategy? I know that was something you kind of touched on briefly last year, how important it is starting from the business plan. So yeah, it'd be great just to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. This is something I really passionately talk about in my Finance for Founders. On that hand, it's founders coming and saying, oh, what should I be doing in finance? And they think finance is this whole other separate bit of the business. Whereas in reality, how I see it is the financial plan or the budget is a translation of the business plan. So you've got your narrative business plan that the founder, CEO, hopefully everyone in the business can articulate where you are now, where you're going, how you're going to get there. And the financial plan and your current budget should be a translation or reflection of that, essentially into a spreadsheet, let's be honest. So narrative to spreadsheet there. And so that business plan is like overarching behind any budget. And then to create a budget, you probably need to build some kind of model in a spreadsheet that's going to be your tool for creating the output set of numbers, which we'll call the budget. And within that tool, we've got these components here that Katie's sharing. So you've got the key drivers of your revenue and all your costs, whether that's OPEX, CAPEX, working capital, drivers of your cash flow, which may be in different timing to your revenue and costs in a P&L perspective. And obviously the time period of the budget is sort of the part of the architecture of that model. So that translation's really important. And what's included in your business plan will be all of your goals and milestones. So the linking up of the goals and milestones timing from your business plan and your budget is crucial. If your budget's saying one thing, we're going to invest in that then, but it's different to what's in the business plan, then suddenly you've got a disconnect.
And how are you approaching that at Charlie at the moment, that with starting with those key milestones, what success looks for the year, and then working back that way?
Yeah, so actually at the moment we're just finishing up a review of our 3-year strategy. So we've got a bit, so we're talking about 2026 budget, but we've got a 3-year strategy. So we're aligning the 2026 budget with that more forward-looking view. And key thing there is when planning the timing of investments and then acknowledging that there's a delay in when we expect those to generate revenue. So linking up the investment with the future revenue, and it may span across financial years as well. So yes, we've got the milestones in terms of the investments, but also the milestones in terms of the predicted future revenue from those investments. And yes, what success looks like, we've got two key metrics that we're focusing that around. I mean, we're a SaaS business, so the rule of 40 metric is our like one of our dominant metrics, success metrics. And the whole team are aware of what that is, made up of EBITDA and MRR growth. And those then cascade down in a KPI tree, if you like, into the metrics across the business. But they're all the same metrics that are in the financial model as in the business plan, so mirroring each other.
Right, and I think that kind of brings us a little bit back to that point earlier about bringing the teams along with you and having that democratization of data. And it's actually something we hear a lot from customers. I think people come to us and say they want to delegate a little bit out of finance. Finance wants that control and wants that visibility, but finance don't know what all those tools do. Finance are not involved in all of those renewals and not necessarily should be, right? So what are some good tips, or how have you in your career helped bring those teams on board?
Definitely. So there's a large part of, I feel strongly that part of our role in finance is to educate the rest of the business in how we want to think about budgets culturally. So all that stuff we talked about at the top.
Right.
And be there to support them in running their functions, not dictate at all, but to support them. And in being able to have tools such as Cladara, where the whole business can see spend in real time and can see budgets, can see how they're spending versus those budgets. It's a really helpful tool for enabling that. Coming back to the transparency point and definitely delegation. And it also it empowers the teams to own their budgets confidently, but finance can still maintain the oversight that they need to do.
Brilliant. Yeah, some great stuff there. And yeah, for everyone here, we will definitely circle back on this later in the webinar. Just kind of touching on that, what you're saying there, Sophie, around delegating budget. We have the tools in there in the platform to be able to do that, delegate to department heads so they can be aware from day one, really, when the budget is set and you communicate it, so they can track, the actual spend versus what you've actually budgeted for them throughout the year. So that's great.
And on that day one point, so if you've got a new manager coming in, it's really important that you, right from the top,
totally
to them, explain to them what the expectation is, what tools you use, how you work, what the culture is in terms of budgets. Do they if they underspend, where does that underspend end up? If they're predicting an underspend, what kind of conversations need to take place? Who do they need to alert? What frequency are you reforecasting, etc.? And you can run regular one-on-ones across the business if necessary, especially if you're changing something or if you have a lot of new staff coming in, run a little internal 101 or webinar on how things work there. And then a big one is to make the process as simple as possible and as clear as possible. So any spending process, make it simple and as clear as possible so people know how to do it as well as what's expected.
Yeah, great. And to hone in a bit on just, I think, kind of software, SaaS, as we put it. We're hearing all the time with our customers, generally SaaS is the second biggest spend after headcount. And kind of, I suppose, with profitability being more in focus and you bringing the teams along with you, how are you personally kind of approaching budgeting for software for 2026?
Yeah, so I suppose the approach hasn't changed massively from last year. The key parts of it are knowing what you have, auditing what you actually need, making sure the tools are being used effectively. And then you can start by pulling the raw numbers. So here's where I'd use Cladara. All of our SaaS subscription spend is in Cladara. So you can pull the raw numbers, spend by department, usage levels, renewal dates, and be able to either have conversations with the team or ask the department heads themselves to do their own review first, to understand what's providing value and what's not. And actually, we've got that going on at the moment at CharlieHR. And so one of the product heads has just done the review of their all of their subscriptions that they manage through Cladara. They've identified one that's just not used anymore. So they've exported the data and are closing it down. They've identified one we're paying for full licenses, where we could be paying for reduced licenses for a number of people. And another where actually they believe that this software subscription has been allocated to the wrong department budget in Cladara, and they're suggesting shifting it to another functions budget. So a few things coming out from that, and they're able to do that independently of finance, and just by logging into Cladara and looking at what they can see.
Awesome, great.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Katie.
No, I was going to say we've been having these conversations. I think it's what lots of people are looking to do. You know, have that ownership in the teams, and it kind of shifts it. You know, makes it less scary, right? It's less about let's cut costs. It's about optimizing value, and it's about, as we've been saying, everyone understanding that the company is here to be successful, and this is part of it.
Exactly, and I suppose it comes a strategic conversation then instead of a reactive one, which is always way better.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, and just to maybe switch gears a little bit, AI. I think it's the topic on everyone's mind right now, and with many tools, I suppose, popping up, current tools that maybe you're using now having AI capabilities built into them, and with that comes new costs attached to them. Sophie, we'd love to just know, how should finance leaders, I suppose, think about budgeting for AI next year? And as well, if you can share a little bit, how are you doing that at CharlieHR?
Yeah, of course. So obviously it is still new territory. Everyone's sort of dabbling in it and figuring out where things are going, unless you are an AI product developer and you are way ahead. So I think there's three components to this. Firstly, there's the sort of experimentation around AI tools. Secondly, there's just the pure cost of AI software, which comes under all the same points that we've discussed above and how you'd look at any other subscription spend. And then the third area is, if you are selling an AI tool yourself, how are you charging customers for it? And linking that to what costs are you incurring running it? Every call you're getting, what costs are you incurring as a business? So there's kind of three components there to budgeting for it. At CharlieHR, we're in the experimentation phase, and how where it affects our budget at the moment for this year is in our L&D budgets. So giving our employees budget to experiment with tools, turn things on and off. We've got the data team involved, like the data security team involved, and every new software has to go through our internal policies to check it complies. But other than that, letting them experiment, and then we have sort of show and tells amongst the team on what people have found out.
Yeah, that's that I've had similar customers. You know, it's, as you're saying, it's not just doesn't just sit with finance, it's InfoSec, IT, compliance are all very interested about these new tools that people are experimenting with. And I've had more than one customer have like a cross-functional committee, something like that, to allow people to try things, because we want people to experiment and find ways to do their jobs better, but in a safe way. And this also, what you're saying about giving people a certain AI budget, kind of baking it into either L&D or just kind of allowing each team to have like a special AI kind of budget, I've heard of as well. And actually, we wanted to open it up to the audience to see if anybody, and in the chat, hopefully you have access to the chat. If you don't, let us know in the Q&A. But if you've got a different approach to how you're budgeting for AI this year, or allowing your teams to experiment with AI, I'd be really interested to hear from everybody else as well.
Great. Yeah, nice little fact. I remembered there, Brad, who's one of our co-founders, he posts a lot on LinkedIn about AI and how we can use it. And yeah, he had a really good post the other day, which was for the last 3 consecutive months. AI platforms like OpenAI, Anthropic, Claude are making up constantly the top 4 of the most added SaaS tools in Cladara. So it's really cool to see that data coming in over the last couple of months.
Yeah, and as a category, it's growing in volume as well in terms of spend, a standard portion of the spend that we're seeing customers spending on AI as well, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I think earlier as well, I said that we'd show you how Cladara supports you, I suppose, with the budgeting process. So I was going to see if Katie, if you can take the wheel here and show us what that looks like in the platform.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. Okay. Cool. Hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, fantastic. Well, actually, so we wanted to start with our report section. And so when it comes to what you said, Sophie, about knowing what you have, this is probably, we thought, a good place to kind of start historical spend graph. This one's set to the last 12 months. Here you've got your total spend broken down by month, and you can even expand it down per team, per software. We were talking just before the call here how this might be a great baseline, but maybe not the assumption that this is going to kind of be the end number, but a good place to start, right?
Definitely. We were saying that audit phase needs to come first. So don't just assume that this is where you should start from, bounce December into January and complete the audit first and then use that audited version. But it's great to see it like this. It's really clear, split by team, split by software. You've got your percentage changes there as well. Just note that it's on a cash basis here as well.
Yeah.
So if you've got an annual plan, for example, it will come up with the whole 12-month cost in one of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that probably actually comes to, well, actually, we'll touch on the budget spend just a moment when it comes to seeing that impact and the cash flow kind of breakdown. So yeah, well, you can export this as well. So it's exportable if you want to take this out of Cladara and put it in a spreadsheet to be able to kind of organize by team and make it a bit more shareable in that sense. And it's not about just setting the budgets one time, right? We're talking about you want to be through the year periodically coming back. So I guess so once you sat down with the teams and gone through this, there will come a time when you will periodically review. And this is perhaps where budgeted spend comes into play. So this is looking forward. This is based on the budgets that you've added per software to Cladara. This is cash flow as well. So for example, you'll be able to see that in March, there's probably a yearly renewal coming out. So that impact's going to happen there. And if you scroll down here, we've got, the actual versus budget month over month. So it's really nice to come in here and see which ones are starting to creep up over that budget. Now, we were saying before, this might be something maybe a financial controller might want to come in and look at monthly, or kind of how might you see yourself using this piece, Sophie?
Yeah, definitely. And so whoever's pulling together the management accounts in your organization, they've probably got a high level variance that they need to explain. So this would be a really useful tool for them to come in and look down by software or by function, which is over, which is under budget. Assuming the budget has been accurately put in, which I'd really encourage you to do because it will save you then a lot of time. An example in there, like you can see that Asana is currently underspent in October. Maybe that's because the payment hasn't gone out yet. We're not quite at the end. But it might be something to keep an eye on. There'll be others as well.
For sure. And yeah, for me as well, in the last couple of months, this budgeted spend section is like a must show for any customers that I'm having calls with. The reaction has been great as well, just to be able to come in here and just see straight away, okay, these are my apps, this is what I'm paying each month, I can export this whole thing. And yeah, it gives finance leaders what they want to, like, this visibility to really make those more data-driven decisions, I suppose, moving forward. So really good.
And I guess it keeps coming back to that culture that you've instilled in the company, making it okay, to expect to maybe, Sophie to reach out, and be like, hey, what's going on here? And it being a conversation, not being a hard and fast rules, right? It just being people are used to having that conversation. Yep, we've added seats, or yeah, it's a usage-based plan. It's a bit more than we thought. And setting that expectation from day one so people know, hey, you're going to reach out and we'd also like you to be involved in this conversation.
Definitely. I don't want people thinking, oh my goodness, Sophie's coming to ask me about my budget. What, it's panicking. It should just be part of what we're talking about every day.
Yeah, totally. And I think that brings us really nicely to like that section that you mentioned that I think your kind of head of product was probably looking through. And I want to show everyone that. So if we come to the team section, this is a really nice place for your team managers to come because they can be, the head of the team or team managers, we call it, and they'd be able to access this view. So for example, Gerard here can come in, see their team stack. So the tools assigned to their team, their budget. So you can actually budget per team and set the budget here so people can see how they're tracking towards that. And of course, the historical spend here. So yes, I guess, Sophie, is this what your head of product was kind of using and coming in to see what tools they've been using and the spend of each one?
That's right. They went through the team stack section and then went to see who had a seat on each tool as the first step.
Nice. Yeah. I even had one customer, I think it was last week, was able to come in here and had the data here, and another team was overspending and needed a little bit extra budget, and one of the teams was not using that budget, and they're actually able to reallocate the budget from one team to another for the ones that really needed it. So yeah, it's great to see this.
That's nice. And then they can come to finance and say, we've got a problem and a solution.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I'm conscious of time. There's two other things I did want to show everyone today, which kind of comes back to that audit or that ongoing kind of conversation about applications or software. And that was about the renewal dates, knowing when things are going to renew, our price is going to go up. So I wanted to show everybody, if we come to the applications view, you probably would have noticed that you can now customize your view. So I've got one I prepared earlier. I've got the IT view here, and next renewal date is now a field that you can add per application, and you can put it up into this view so you can very quickly see when things are coming up. What we heard from customers, not always the next payment date aligned with that contract renewal date. And this way you can really get ahead of those, not get hit by those kind of just suddenly a big charge coming out. You can actually be prepared. Set the reminder a few months before, probably best practice 2 months before, set a reminder to go out to the key stakeholders so everyone can be having that conversation way ahead of time. Make sure you're renewing on the best terms possible, the correct number of seats, and obviously in budget or no or under budget if there's some removal of seats to be had. And the second piece was around, coming back to the AI piece, was how a bit of process around allowing that AI. So Sophie, you mentioned actually there's a process within CharlieHR for people to get access to those tools, and they'd have to come through kind of IT first, and then obviously finance as well. That's really great if you've got that baked in to your processes. If not, a lot of our customers are really enjoying using informal SaaS. This is via our Cledara Engage extension. And this is going to tell you which tools are getting used that are not added as applications to Cledara. And you can pick up on those tools very quickly. And again, it's about having those conversations, right? Being used to having perhaps head of IT, as we do here at Cledara, come and give you a tap on the shoulder and say, hey, what's this tool? What are we using it for? And is it any good? And what, are they SOC 2 certified? What data you're being shared? Just ask the right questions and have that conversation.
Definitely. I even had a customer last week come in here and filter the results here and just actually look at what I think maybe it was Claude, and he was able to see, okay, wow, it grouped them all together, and he was able to see how many people individually had logged in the last 30 days into Claude, and was quite shocked by that. So they didn't have their current tech stack. So yeah, very cool.
Fantastic. Sophie, so is the process all built out at Charlie? Do people know where to go? Is there that education around, okay, this is what we do when it comes to software?
Yeah, and the tools really help us with that. Being able to give everyone, as part of their onboarding, access to Cledara and other spend management tools for different types of purchasing. They're then really clear. I think we're all used to in our sort of personal lives having an app for that. They know, okay, this is the app for that. And it's quite easily then relatable for them in their work life to know this is where I come to do this thing.
That makes a lot of sense. And with the renewals as well, right? Getting ahead of those and having that periodic review of the tools. Again, it's about bringing those people on board and having the data visible and accessible to everybody.
Yeah, totally. And it allows that cross collaboration finance with everybody else. They know finance are kind of keeping an eye on it, but we also have the ownership to take the ownership of it ourselves as well. And that keeps the conversation open, because if finance come and say, oh, this renewal's upcoming, hopefully they say, oh yeah, I know, and this is what we're doing about it, or we're already in discussion.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're open to questions. I know we're just at time, but I think we can stay a few extra minutes on. Have we had any questions kind of come through?
Yeah, actually, with Kathy asked here in the chat, we're struggling a bit this year with vendor charges, with vendors charging differently. How do you yourself, Sophie, manage this mix of contracts, plans, and payments?
So is that where a vendor is changing their changing.
Yeah, so it's more just like in the mix of like different vendors are charging us, well, some by card, some by bank transfer, some on different dates, quarterly, monthly.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. How is it? How do you kind of keep on top of that, I suppose, throughout the year?
Yes. So we have the majority of ours are paid by card, and we use Cladara to make sure that those are paid, make sure the budgets are up to date, so the card payments go through and all the alerts in place. So if a payment fails, we know to fix that if it's gone over budget for a reason. Those that are invoiced, we don't have too many of those, to be honest.
Yeah.
The majority are on card, but we have a separate process for invoiced ones that come through our like procure to pay process that we've established. But it's pretty simple. They get sent to an inbox. There's a approval process, and then they flow automatically through our payments.
Perfect. Great. I hope that helps, Kathy. And then just one last one here quickly. How do you plan for subscription increases if more seats or licenses are added? Is there a buffer that you'd build in to the budget?
Yeah, we have a slight buffer on top of all of our subscription. So the budget that's in Cladara is slightly over because, yes, as we know, like these types of subscriptions, there'd be some are fixed. I mean, like our Xero subscription's fixed each month. Some are slightly variable, depending on usage. So we've set an appropriate buffer, and to be honest, that's different for each one. And where, that's been a conversation with the head of department, say like, where do you think this could go on a like heavy usage month, and where should it be lower? And aiding them in that conversation, using our finance skills to say, okay, what's the driver, like to get them to think about what the driver of the cost is, to be able to set a maximum. But the key there is the maximum can't be too high, or you'll always be spending over without meaning to.
Great. Thank you. I think that's it for the questions. There's a couple more in there, but I know we're short on time, we can answer them offline.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure to follow up with everyone. Just before we kind of sign off, if anyone on the call today is interested in speaking to myself or Paul or any member of the team about any of the features they've seen today, they want to explore further, then I'm just launching a poll. Let us know if you'd like one of us to reach out, leave us your email address so we know how to contact you, and a member of the team will reach out shortly. And just while we're filling that in, I guess the final thing for me to say is a really big thank you to Sophie for joining us today and sharing those insights. It's been really useful. So thank you so much for being here. And to Paul as well, thank you so much for being my co-host today.
Thank you.
We will see you next month for another Cladara Connects. If you're interested in sharing any ideas for topics, please reach out to the Success team. We're contactable at success@cladara.com. And looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Lovely to chat. Bye.
Thanks, Sophie. Bye.